Bryant Ramirez is a business strategist and coach who helps organizations make meaningful change, resulting in increased business and employee engagement. He holds an MBA and he has studied all over the world, Jason. In fact, he just finished exploring 60 countries on 6 continents. We'll have to figure out which one he did not go to. There's 7, aren't there?
I believe so. It's been a while.
I know. And so he especially loves to work with millennials and with organizations that are ready to modernize. Bryant, come on up and join us. Where are you, sir? There you are.
Hey, Jason.
Good morning, Bryant.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, good to see you today. Tell everybody what your top 5 are on the Clifton Strengths Assessment.
Wonderful. Yeah, my top 5 are ideation, woo, communication, strategic, and activator. So what's interesting, when Rhonda and I met at Strength Summit, we were like, wow, our top 4 of our top 5 are the same.
They are. Isn't that funny? Because I am ideation, woo, maximizer, communication, and activator. Strategic is not quite high enough to suit me.
That's why you got Jason.
Say again, Bryant.
Well, you got Jason here.
Yes, that's right. Jason, you start off, sir.
Bryant, why don't you tell us how you've worked on developing your talent since you first took the test?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I got my MBA, and through learning through the MBA and traveling all over the world, I realized that I needed to develop myself, but I needed an objective guide. And one of my faculty advisors said, you should look into StrengthsFinder. So I took the test, and it seemed to speak to me. But I felt like the coaching is what gets you to make it work. It turns it from entertainment to development. So what I did is, once not only I got the top 5, I read through it, I understood it from a high level, but every day what I do is I focus on prototyping something of that top 5. So today, perhaps you can call it communication right here. And practicing it and iterating. So what I love to do is I love to combine strengths as a foundation with design thinking methodologies. So we're constantly prototyping, constantly iterating, constantly improving, and that's how we're engaged in everything we do. So I always think about, here are my top 5, and then once you open up all 34, then you start looking at the whole world. And what's funny, we had a conversation yesterday about consistency and discipline. They're both lesser talents for both Rhonda and I. So we were discussing, how then do we build consistency? So I asked her, how did you build consistency to do this show? Well, we locked it in every week, and I got Jason to hold me accountable. So it's not like as if...
Yeah, I roped him in. He'll tell you in a heartbeat.
Right. It's not like you can't be consistent, but you can work on it. So it's not just the top 5. I think we all have to unlock all 34 and have a relationship with all 34. But it's easy to have a relationship with your top 5, right? Because it's right up there.
Yeah.
So every day, I always work on 1 or 2 of them to really focus on how I can continue to develop as a strength, or if they're a lesser talent, how my strengths can help manifest in those behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that you prototype something each day, so essentially, if I'm understanding you correctly, you take a talent and you pick which talent you want to work on, and then you say to yourself, this is how I'm going to develop this talent to another level today. Is that basically what you're saying?
I don't know if it's very conscious as much as once you name it, claim it, aim it, once you really start to aim it, then it becomes something that you own, and then I recognize it afterwards. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the coach really helps. Like, you start to own it, and then when I've worked with my clients, then I start by pushing. Here's a situation that you faced. How do you use your strengths to reframe the situation? And then it eventually becomes second nature. So I think it's become a bit second nature now.
Interesting.
And I think you're probably wired for it to become second nature too, in some ways.
I'd say so.
Yeah, it takes effort. Like I tell people all the time, this is the work of your life. Mm-hmm. And you'll be done when you're dead. I mean, you can constantly, and where you want to focus is on these top talents of yours, not on the getting locked up in the bottom ones. You need to know what the bottom ones, as Audra told us earlier, you could hear clear awareness of where she knew she needed to outsource and partner with other people. And that's why knowing the bottom ones is important. However, where you want to focus your development and your time and your energy in growing yourself is in those top ones. And chances are, even though you're already aware of them, they are as close as the tip of your nose. So you don't ever really even notice that you're using them. Like I'm using my communication right now because we're talking about it. Otherwise, I don't really sit and analyze, I'm talking today. Let me think about how I'm going to talk today. I just make sure that I'm constantly talking. That's how I develop to talk a lot.
Do you really have to make sure that you're doing that, Rhonda?
No, but I'll tell you this right now. Thank you, Delilah. We're loving the content too. I'll tell you this right now, though, is that when I don't have an opportunity to talk and to express myself, like let's say I'm sick, and I'm in bed 3 days. Oh my gosh. I just total loss of energy. And I know that what I have to do is get out and about among the people again. Yep. So that I can communicate, so that I can woo, so that I can, do all of those things that I do best.
We talked about intentionality. So it's about being intentional, but not being overly conscious. I think it's actually one of these things where you have to claim it, and then you just have to go with it. And once you go with it, then you're gonna run, and you're gonna look at the world differently. And I start to really look at the world differently.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. I teach strengths with fabulous stories using communication. And I think Debbie does too. Those of us who are high in communication, we do. We are the storytellers. And I like what you said about intention. And then without being conscious, you just kind of let it go.
You're intentional, but you don't need to keep it on the front of your mind the whole time.
Yeah, because it's always present. That's why. Yeah, it's always there. So it's when you're
still there, right?
Say again.
Your muscles, if you work out, right? Your muscle.
I'm not sure but anyway.
You got it. There you go. Strong woman, right? Your muscle in fact, your muscle builds when you're resting, when you're not working out. That's when it builds, but you have to work it out. You have to exercise. So call that the intention, But it's when you're resting is when the muscle physically grows because it's repairing itself.
Mm-hmm. Wynn says it helps to ask others about where they see our themes working. Absolutely. Yeah. Again, because you're kind of blind to your own amazing self, in reality. So now you work a lot with millennials and, they are a big topic of conversation. And, what I train people and teach people about when it comes to millennials is to learn how they're gifted and look there instead of looking there, which is where you don't like what you're seeing, right? So tell us what you see in millennials and where your hope is, because I know that you really, really want to work with, and you do work with millennials very well.
Yeah, so I am a millennial. I'm right in the middle of that age range, right? So I'm smack dab in the midpoint. And I think the millennial generation is special in that we've seen the analog world and we've seen the digital world. Now, I believe it or not, I've made mistakes. Believe it or not, I've sat next to a phone and waited for it to ring. I've had to keep a plan in high school because if you didn't, then you're not going to meet someone. Like, you have to keep a plan. Now you just text someone, say you're running late, and we all do it. Things that all these behaviors aren't specifically just millennial behaviors. It may have manifested in the way in which technology and different interactions, the way in which we engage with each other, the way we interface. But all of us are, if you're using Facebook, if you're using any social media, we all adopt those behaviors. The difference isn't that the people are inherently different. It's not like as if millennials are a different species, but the interfaces are different. So the way in which we interface has changed. In fact, I have the top 5 for millennials. So yeah, I have the top 5. achiever, empathy, learner, adaptability, and responsibility. Now, how many of those top 5 do you think is shared by the last 4 generations? So we have, Xers, baby boomers, traditionalists.
I think 4 of them. 4.
What do you think, Jason?
I don't know how to venture a guess on that. I'm going to say 3. I'll go for the under.
Jason is right.
Yeah,
I thought he was being
achiever, learner, and responsibility are shared by all 4 generations.
Mm-hmm. How they manifest themselves, though, may look different, and I think that's where the misunderstandings come from.
Exactly.
But I'm not surprised to hear that empathy is high for the millennials. I mean, I think we've seen that through some of the activism and various things that have gone on over the last several years. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing with regards to how we're interacting. We're interacting with more social care, more social impact.
Now, why do you think that some of those talents have, I mean, if there's 3 that are alike throughout the past 4 generations, what has made those others? I mean, we've talked about earlier, women have empathy higher, but what is the result, or what is the reason for an increase in empathy, say, among men or a younger generation, and then some of those other talents as well, in your opinion?
My hypothesis would be awareness. We've never been so aware of what's going on in the world as ever before, simply because we now have the tools. The fact we can do this live session, we couldn't even do this 2 years ago. The fact we can do this right now, there are folks who start their careers on radio, and they had to pay thousands of dollars to get airtime, half an hour airtime.
Yeah.
We're fortunate enough. This is really a powerful time period, and it's going to be completely transformational as millennials become decision makers. It's not that millennials are inherently different as much as the interfaces are different, which means that yes, behaviors have changed, but it's not just because of the person. It's because of the context of what's around us. So because all that's put together, it's a lot easier to say, oh, just millennial, they're just entitled. They just want only what they want. Well, in fact, I would argue they want what anybody wants. It just may manifest in a different way, as Rhonda said. I had a conversation earlier today with a colleague, and I asked, we were talking about millennials, it just came up. And I was saying, well, you might want to expose folks to senior leadership, and senior leadership may want to talk to millennials so you can learn from each other. And this person's like, do they really care? Do they, as in millennials, care? And I'd say everybody does. Like whether you're working in a corporate environment, if you're working with clients, you're going to care what your client or a senior leader thinks. And having that interface and that dialogue matters. We want to have a constant dialogue. So it's the interfaces that have changed.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great perspective because, I mean, I think, Rhonda and I remember the days that, I mean, there were only 3 channels on TV and, it went off at midnight. And I mean, I was really, really young, but I still remember that. And
okay, Jason, I do remember it more clearly. What's your point?
Well, but now we have, you have 300 channels available on cable or satellite. You have a 24-hour news cycle. You have more radio stations. You have, you have podcasts. You can get information 24 hours a day from a multitude of different sources. And, it's exactly what Bryant is saying. I mean, we are aware of everything going on in the world at all times. And so it makes perfect sense to be able to, we have more ability to respond to that than ever before.
And
listen, Debbie brings up a great point. She says millennials care about the heart space or social consciousness more than prior generations because they see the useless burnout of the prior generations. Wow. I believe that totally true.
What does she mean by useless burnout?
She sees, people are burned out, right? Brian, isn't that how you view the adults in your life, that they're burned out, grinding all the time,
we're all, we're adults in some ways and we're kids in some ways too.
Yeah.
And I think that, what's funny is I think people forget that millennials are like in their 30s. And there are folks, regardless of if you're a customer, there's a discussion of the Zennial, we discussed this, right? And we actually I interface with both sides, right? So you have to look at both sides of the coin. For this to work, you have to look at both sides of the coin. It's the person, the individual, and the organizations that interface. And if the organizations aren't going to evolve in the way in which they interface with not just millennials, but everybody, it's the millennial age that's changing this. Then
I totally agree.
Behind not just internally, but more importantly for them, externally, with their clients, with their customers, with folks who want to learn more about what they do. Look, here's an example. Since we are likely more independent because we have the internet, we can go and immediately look something up, and we'll make a judgment call based on your website, based on your media presence.
Right.
I remember the days where I went to look into encyclopedias to get my information.
Yeah.
Now that
was the only way we could do it.
That's the only way you could do it. And now you have information at your fingertips. It changes the way we interact.
It sure is.
I see Debbie's comment there about the useless burnout, and I do understand that. But I feel like overall, it's not just the millennials, but now because of some of the things that we're talking about, it seems like, there are some people that stay in that rut, and I think we've talked before about people staying in their job for 15, 20, 45 years doing the same job, and I can see that. But it seems to me that even people, maybe some baby boomers and Gen Xers are more willing to reinvent themselves, or maybe it's just people that I'm around. But it seems like everybody has accepted the fact that you have to reinvent yourself and go in different directions now than ever before. Am I mistaken in my thinking there?
You're absolutely right. And I have a 501c3, and my chairman, was one of the first 100 employees at Oracle. He is somebody that has worked with many of the top leaders in Silicon Valley, and he's now wanting to learn and relearn. He's one of the innovators back in the 80s and 90s who made Silicon Valley where it is today, and he's looking to learn and relearn. So we have a very interesting relationship, and I went through his strengths. I coached him, and to find people who are older, by physical age, but really mentally are so keen on continuous development. It demonstrates to me that it doesn't matter what your age is. So what matters is how you view your perspective and what you want to do in the world. And he's like, I can still make an impact in the world. The guy lives at the top of the hill, in the county. He doesn't need to do anything more. He could just chill there if he wants to. It's a beautiful view, but he really still wants to move and shake. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we can do as coaches. Help these.
My perspective might be a little bit skewed because I work in an industry, if you will, that is constantly changing. I have a background in broadcasting. I've worked in television. Technology has changes rapidly. I learned how to. You talked about radio. I learned how to edit using actual reel-to-reel tape and taping, splicing. And, now everything's digital. So, everything has changed, and I've had to change. If I wanted to keep up and stay in this industry, I've had to kind of reinvent myself, relearn things. I work in a completely different way now than I did 20 years ago. So, I don't know if that skews my perspective on that or not. So.
And one more nugget to your
let me just add this real quick. You better be careful, Jason, because Debbie's going to call you an old goat in a minute.
Well, I thought she already did. So.
One more nugget.
Say it again.
Feedback, right? Feedback. You're able to get feedback. We're able to get comments right now. We're able to see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Think of when you're broadcasting 20 years ago, could your viewers put up on, type in something and you're able to interface with your viewers the way you do? You can't. We get instant feedback, and there's pros and cons to that. Mm-hmm. So you get that little dopamine fix when you get a like. So the guy that created that button doesn't use Facebook.
This is not funny.
He's a billionaire.
Human psychology.
Billionaire.
Uh-huh.
Partially because he worked at Facebook, and he
right
early on created the like button. Think of the like button and how that impacts all of our behavior.
And how some people are truly addicted to that too. Maybe we all are to a degree.
I think we all
hanging out
on
on Facebook.
right. So the point I'm making is to really catch all those things. And what I do is I try my best to manage that. So my activator is high. So I want to get things started. When you get that dopamine fix, that means you got validated. Keep going. What if you don't get that dopamine fix? Does that mean it's crap because someone didn't validate it? I don't think so. I just think maybe the person didn't see it or you don't know.
Yeah.
So in a way, we have to live in the don't know much more effectively these days because
uncertainty.
You have to be more comfortable. And if you believe in it, you got to run with it. And that's that's where it matters.
Yeah, this entire show is based on uncertainty. We get our live viewers, and then we're uncertain if anybody else is going to watch, and we're always pleasantly surprised when we get more likes and views.
And grateful too.
Yeah, absolutely grateful.
Yeah. Well, Bryant, it has sure been great talking to you and learning a little bit more about millennials and how you live out the talents and in your strengths. And so tell everybody how we can reach you.
Absolutely, Wallace. So you can go to millennialstrengths.com. You can go and there's the like button, and Facebook. So you can find me on Instagram. One thing I'm going to be doing starting next year is called a Minute of Strength. So every day I'm going to put a minute of strength. You can find me on LinkedIn, Bryant Ramirez. So you'll find me up there, hopefully at the top. If I have my LinkedIn page, please feel free to connect with me. Really what I want to do is make an impact so that millennials can become the decision makers that make society the strongest society it can be.
Well, and guess what? It's coming on fast. So we're
very fast.
And we're grateful to have people like you out there serving up Strengths Finder and helping people, learn more about themselves so they can be more, do more, have more. That's what it's really all about. So
wonderful. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon. Okay. Bye. So, wow, he brings hope, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Really some incredible information there and just a lot of wisdom for a younger guy, if you will.